the whole thing on. Okay, Mike, here we go. Talk is not a decent talk if there's no Focke-Wulf. Right. So to continue, the Germans deployed the Focke-Wulf 190 and of course the Messerschmitt 109 to attack British coastline targets in hit and run raids. So suddenly now I forgot, I think it's end of 41, beginning 42, I'm not sure exactly the time. What they would do, it was a new type of daring raid that they did when the Focke-Wulf came online. I mean, that thing motored. It was a very fast aircraft. So they would typically cross a channel under 200 feet, in other words, coming under the radar. Once they cross the British coastline, targets of opportunity, whether it's civilian or military, they would attack them, and then they would run for home. They would run back across the channel. Even the chain home radar, etc., would not pick it up. And then the last line, there was only one aircraft that could catch the Focke-Wulf, and that was the Typhoon. So here I found a nice photo of over the water, but it's a Messerschmitt, not a Focke-Wulf. But Mike, before you think I don't know my aircraft, there we are. That's okay. So here are some details about the Focke-Wulf, and incredibly fast. And there is on the one video that I had details about the attacks on the British coastline from runways that they had in Belgium, etc. And only the Focke-Wulf, the Typhoon, could catch it. So here you've got a blow-by-blow comparison. On the left is a Typhoon 1B, in other words, one of the cannons. On the right, the Focke-Wulf. You can see the power plant. The Typhoon had the strongest power plant at 2,180 horsepower versus the Focke-Wulf's on the right-hand side, 1,700 horsepower. Speed, the second line, is 663 kilometers an hour versus the Focke-Wulf 635 kilometers per hour. Range, that's not really relevant here. Both of them flew with drop tanks, which influence the range. So, but you can see the first on power plant, speed and range. The Typhoon won out because you've got the roundels, the British roundels to the left. Bomb load, the Focke-Wulf won out. It's got the swastika to the right-hand side. It could lift a heavier bomb load initially. And armament, the guy didn't score either of them because both of them depended what you wanted to use the armament for. The Focke-Wulf had a brilliant armament. Sometimes it was better than what the Typhoon would have. But in any case, important thing is this aircraft was a disaster. And then the Focke-Wulf raids and the Typhoon could catch them, bring them down and stop those raids, and people were willing to give the Typhoon a second look. And so with the coming D-Day preparations, the Allied command realized that the landings on European soil could only be successful if they have total air superiority, and they need a capable aircraft to fulfill the roles of fighter and ground support. And the Typhoon were more filling the niche of ground support. And so the Typhoon squadrons were absorbed into what they call second TAF, second tactical airport, as part of D-Day planning. And so they started recognizing the role of the Typhoon, not what it was designed for, but for ground attack. It was absolutely brilliant. So people started, now that they realized this thing is not that good for high altitude interception, let's put some bombs on it. So it could carry two 500-pound bombs or 2,000-pound bombs. and it did it very well. So they're now thinking outside the box. So 2,000-pound bombs, as one guy said, it's like having two family cars strapped under the wings of this aircraft. That's what it could lift. And of course, the big game changer, the rockets came about, 4 on each wing. It would have 8 60-pound bombs, rockets, and this really put it in a league of its own. So ground attack, that was its new role. So there you can see the 1B with the cannons. This one still had, unfortunately, the car door. It didn't have the bubble canopy. And you can see the rockets over there. And these are from the cameras. When you see that, you don't want to be in the path of this. This was absolutely devastating, and the Typhoon became a bastard, if the only way I can describe it, a monster. And this was usually the result. So the later, the last stages of the war after D-Day, the German army couldn't move in daylight. Whenever they moved, they were destroyed, especially by the Typhoon and the Tempest, the rocket-carrying aircraft. They were absolutely, they had to tank crews started driving their tanks with the hatches open, simply so that they could get out, bail out quicker if any Typhoon came around. The Typhoon just came into a new role all of its own, and it was absolutely devastating. And to read to the right of the photo there, the sheer power of just one Typhoon was equivalent to a destroyer's broadside. So you could compare it to a Navy ship. So it was devastating. It wasn't what it was designed for, but once they sorted out the problems, it became something else. Okay, this is the Tempest, not the Typhoon, but this is the gun sights, just for interest sake. And then to come to the variants, the different variants. In the beginning, I said this is a story of the Typhoon and the Tornado and the Tempest and the Fury. And this is where it gets very confusing. And if you end off this talk being very confused, don't worry, me who put it together, just as confused as you are. So, right, in the beginning, I said they decided to have the Air Ministry developed 4 prototypes, 2 with the Rolls-Royce Vulture engine, didn't work, and 2 with the Napier engine. So on the Rolls-Royce Vulture engine, there is, that looks like a Hawker Hurricane, just a supersized Hawker Hurricane, and it had great instability problems due to this air scoop like the Hurricane had here in the below the wing, and then later on they solved it by moving into the nose. There you can see the different nose. So here are the 2 prototypes. The one with the Rolls-Royce Vulture, another one later on they put a Bristol engine. We'll get to the engine in a moment. The bottom one is actually very important because that led to the Fury later on. Here you can see the difference between the Tornado, the Type R with the Rolls-Royce Vulture. What's important, you can't see it very well, the wing is in the way, but where my cursor is now, there's a second set of exhaust ports. That's on the Rolls-Royce Vulture. The Napier had 1 single row, but I mean, you can't really tell the difference between the 2 unless you look at the exhaust. You can see the left, the Tornado with the double row of exhaust ports. That's the Rolls-Royce Vulture engine, which went nowhere and it was scrapped, but the Napier engine had the single low. Okay, so you've got the Tornado, which Only two were built off, but they gave it a name. They called it a Tornado. And you had the Typhoon, which went on to become the successful one. And as I said, you had the Mark I with the machine guns, simply because they didn't have enough cannons. And then you had the okay, here's the Mark I again with the machine guns. And then you had the 1B with the Hispano cannons and the better version. And now it starts getting, okay, and there you can see the cannons. Now it starts getting a bit more confusing. Okay, this is still the Mark 1B with the Napier engine and the 4 Hispano cannons. And then the wing design disaster. So to read to the left, NACA. Now, NACA. If you look to the right, where my cursor is now, the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics. So NACA stands for that advisory committee. And to read again to the left, NACA was a United States federal agency founded in 1915 to undertake, promote, and institutionalize aeronautical research. So they did all these research and they made it publicly available. In 1958, the agency was dissolved and it became NASA, the space agency. So NACA became NASA later on. And they did test, look at that to the left, the photo. That's not a model, that's a real size aircraft. Look at the man standing at the stand below it, and behind it in the wind tunnel you can see there's a guy crouching, right? So they NACA did all these tests and they made the results publicly available, and people around the world, in Russia, in Germany, in Britain, use the result of these publicly made designs to design the aircraft. So a lot of the aircraft got their data from these wind tunnel tests. Right, and like all government organizations, they're not perfect. They made a mistake. So NACA published a report in 1938 that was flawed. The Hawker team used this data to design the wings for the Typhoon. So this is the Typhoon, which turned out to be too thick to allow it to fly fast or high. The flaw was discovered and corrected in 1939. War hasn't broken out yet, but it was too late for the Typhoon project. And so what happened is Hawker started a parallel project to the Typhoon, and they called it the Typhoon Mark II or Tempest. So to the right, there is your Typhoon 1 with the wrong wing due to the design, and the Tempest, which is Typhoon Mark II or Tempest, with the different wing, with the corrected wing. Right, so now we had the Tornado and the Typhoon, and now we're getting the Tempest added, which some people call Typhoon Mark II, but they generally refer to it with its own name, the Tempest. And there you can see the Hawker Tempest. It's a Typhoon. I won't be able to look at these photos and see all the differences. They all have one row of exhaust, so that's the Napier engine. But yeah, when you read the books, I read books on the Typhoon, the Tempest, the Sea Fury and all that, and they all had the same story to tell. The barn door, the car door canopy, the tail shearing off. It's like you're reading the same story again. All of these stories run absolutely parallel to each other. And so that's the Tempest. You can see the different Tempest models, but look at the top right-hand side one. That's the Tempest Mark II with the engine, the Sabre engine that I will get to. But look at all the others, like the Mark V was the ultimate one. It's a Typhoon for all practical purposes. And there there's a Tempest, once again, two models. the one with this radial engine to the left and the Napier engine to the right, but the different wing. And here you can see Tempest once again, and different air forces. So this is the Tempest with the radial engine, and there's the radial engine, the Bristol Centaurus engine that they put on. And there you can see its specifications. And I'm going fairly fast at the moment, but as I said, I gave you all that PDF file. It came on Yakorpra, so you can sit at your own leisure and look at the statistics if you want to compare the speed, and I'm now going too fast for you to do that. But so the Tempest came in two models, the one with the Napier engine and the bulbous nose, and the other one. And there you can see this is just on the laminar flow and the wing, but just a very nice artwork there. There's Tempest, which for me is Typhoon again, so I'm not going to stand too much. And now, just to confuse you all, when you got round used to the radial engine, Bristol engine Tempest, here's the Sea Fury. But the Sea Fury was for carrier landings. It could land on carrier aircraft. So to distinguish these aircraft from each other, I just at one stage stopped and said, it's above me. I give the talk. I'm supposed to be the expert, but I'm going to show you a bunch of artwork and things now, but you'll see to recognize them all one from each other is very difficult. So there's just to the left is Typhoons, the type 1A, 1B, and to the right is the Tempest. And the Tempest on the right, the top one, as you can see, looks very much a bit like a Spitfire nose, but it's got the fish bones on the tail at the back. The second one on the right is the Tempest 5, which is virtually the Typhoon. The Tempest 2, the third one down the line, and then of course the Tempest 6. So yeah, very difficult to distinguish. Now we get to the important part. The Typhoon and the Tempest did not establish air superiority. Very important to take note of that. But once air superiority was attained, the aircraft stepped in as the iconic aircraft, fulfilling the role as the great destroyer of German land forces. Boy, they whacked the Germans. They couldn't move in daylight because of especially the Typhoon and the air superiority. And a very important point that one of the guys make is the bottom line: the Typhoon attained an accuracy which did not exist before. Before this, they compared them to Bristol Beaufighter, etc., and you had a more medium-sized bomber. This wasn't a bomber. Okay, it could carry bombs, but with the rockets and all that, and doing what they did, there was just a new level of accuracy that they attained, and that's part of why this aircraft became so famous, if you can put it that way. Or, well, actually not famous, but we'll get to that in a moment. Okay, I'm not going to talk really for the next 2-3 minutes. I want to show you war art that I found, and they all open source. I didn't give each one a specific reference, but in 10 minutes on the internet you can find all these photos for yourself. But look at that. It made some of the most wonderful artwork, and here we've still got a few black and whites, but you can see there's convoy. Well, hopefully that's yeah, there you can see. Don't ask me, is it Typhoon, is it Tempest? I think this one is Typhoon, but as I say, it gets very confusing. Look at that, just absolutely, I think, stunning. And now we get to, as I said, initially when the British developed it, it was a monster aircraft for the pilots. It fell out of the sky. It had a lot of problems. Once they solved the problems, it became a monster, but a monster to the German land forces. When you see this, you better tremble and fear, because they just came in, and they make the most fantastic war art. Look at that. These photos just tells you the picture. I don't have to say anything. You don't want to be on the receiving end of this. This one is actually from a video where they use video animation. So this wasn't a human artist that really made it. It's animation. But yeah, everything got blew up left, right, and center. I mean, they brought the railway networks to a stand with still all the, yeah. And then over the ocean, well, mostly over the channel, but here you can see Dover, the white cliffs of Dover. So this one is crossing the channel to go, well, D-Day. There you can see the beaches. I'm not sure if this is Omaha or which beach it is. I guess some people in the audience will recognize exactly which beach it is, but there's another D-Day landing. This time D-Day markings, the white stripes to identify it. Okay, as I said, they were flying with the white stripes, white and black stripes, long before other aircraft. And another marking there, here over the ocean. Okay, that one I did show earlier on. I did use that one. And here is a bit of an airy-fairy one with lovely looks like the universe in the background and stars, although they never used them for night flying as far as I know. Okay, back to, after all the pretty pictures, back to the more serious stuff. 1937, specification 18/35 of 1937. And then in July, the second line, Hawker submitted its initial designs for the Tornado and the Typhoon. Then 1938, they started up the Napier Sabre engine for the first time. So that engine was designed up to a running prototype. Just after that, 1938 again, the ministry specified that they want an aircraft with an engine more than 200 horsepower. And 39, the Tornado prototype was complete. Tornado, remember the one that didn't go on. And then also in 1939, the wing error was discovered, the Naka error, and that new design led to the Tempest. And then war broke out, 1939 in September. And then if you look at two lines below that, 1940 July, Battle of Britain. The Typhoon produced delays in favor of Hurricane production. So they were the Hurricane, the Spitfire, they were proving themselves, and they just said produce, produce, produce. And so the Typhoon and all the other aircraft had a bit of a setback. Okay, 1941, 11th September, today a magic day for the Americans, but 11th September, oops, now I went, okay, how do I get back to the previous?
Arrow keys. Left click again.
Left click, oh,
and then use arrow keys now.
No, oh, arrow keys.
Yeah, they all work now.
Sorry, I went on to the wrong one there. Ah, there we go. Sorry for that, my apologies. Okay, so we were on September 11, the delivery of the first Typhoon unit, and then later in 41, the Focke-Wulf raids. And that's when, by that time, the ministry were giving up on the Typhoon and the Tempest, and then the Focke-Wulf raid started, and the Typhoon came into its own. And then by June the 6th, third line from the bottom, 1944 D-Day, the Typhoon had developed into its own with bombs, with rockets. And 1944, the Napier Sabrum engine problems were at last sorted out. Now it was a reliable engine. And then the war came to an end, and they simply uh, all the Typhoons were basically scrapped. The Tempest and the Sea Fury still had a war or life after the war was over. But the aces, Typhoon aces, you can see there were no really big scorers. To the left top line, Baldwin, 15 confirmed kills. That compares all right, but nothing to the other aircraft. Remember, this was supposed to be a fighter originally, but it became much more of a ground attack. And then in the fighter role, high altitude performance, or the fighter role, 246 aerial victories to over 500 Typhoons shot down in the European theater. And as the guy says there, a less than ideal ratio. That was in the fighter role. But in the ground attack role, this thing just exceeded. And another role it exceeded in was the V1 flying bomb. You can see the aces to the left. J. Berry confirmed 60 V1 flying bombs that he brought down. Second highest, Van Lierde with 44, Baumann 31, etc., etc. This thing really whacked the flying bomb, well, with the Spitfire, of course, but it came into its own in a different role to what it was designed for. Okay, give the problem start again. Comparisons. I couldn't get a direct comparison of the size of a Typhoon or a Tempest to other aircraft, but I could find a Thunderbolt. So to the right, there you have the Thunderbolt, P-47. Okay. And to give you a reference of the size of the Thunderbolt to the Hawker Typhoon and the Tempest, you can see the Thunderbolt, I'm sticking now to meters. Thunderbolt, 11 meters length, the body, whereas the Typhoon, where my cursor is now, 9.74 meter for the Typhoon, and for the Tempest in green, 10.26. So the Thunderbolt had a bigger body. Now, before I started this talk, I would have told anyone with a straight face that the largest fighter aircraft of the war was the Thunderbolt. And then when I read this, so many of the sources said the Tempest was the largest fighter. It was bigger than the Thunderbolt. But how do you define that? The length of the Thunderbolt was longer, 11 meters to the Tempest, 10.26 meters. But look at the height and the wingspan. The Typhoon and the Tempest is higher and got a greater wingspan than the Thunderbolt. So now, after this talk, I can tell you with a straight face, I don't know which aircraft is the biggest fighter of World War II. How do you want to define it? But in any case, there you can see top right, the Focke-Wulf versus the Thunderbolt. And so the Tempest Typhoon, a little bit smaller. You can see the Zeros, the Spitfire, the Messerschmitt, and the Mustang. So this aircraft went into obscurity and nobody bothered to do a size comparison for this aircraft. Another comparison is speed. And there you can see to the right, the top speeds of World War II famous fighter aircraft, and they don't even list the Typhoon or the Tempest there. But you can see the Corsair, fastest one, and at the bottom 446 miles per hour. Typhoon, different sources give different things, but the Typhoon 1B was 422 or 413 miles per hour, depending on which source you want to agree on. But the Tempest, all the sources agree 466 miles per hour. That's faster than any of the aircraft that they have on the right-hand side. That is faster than the Corsair or the Lightning or etc. So the Tempest seems to me, the fastest aircraft, and the Typhoon, whether you choose 422 or 413 miles per hour, still came in slightly slower than the Focke-Wulf. Problem is, do you compare early models to later models? And nobody says specifically which model of what aircraft they're comparing. So, it's a bit up in the air. Right, another comparison is how many were produced. And it says 10 most produced, but they show 5 aircraft. Marius, you originally had this in one of your talks, and the Illusion, the most produced aircraft, but better picture, I think, is the next one. Here I've got 2 columns, but from the top to the bottom is the amount produced. The most produced is at the top, and the least produced is at the bottom. Left-hand column is aircraft you can compare the Typhoon with other fighter aircraft or the same role, whereas to the right you can't compare them. The most produced aircraft ever, as you know, the Cessna 172 at 44,000 units produced. So you can't compare that to a Typhoon. So I put that in the right-hand column. On the left-hand column, fighter aircraft. It was supposed to be fighter. So there you've got the Illusion at 36,000. So the highest produced military aircraft ever. The Messerschmitt at nearly 44,000, the Spitfire at 20,351, the Focke-Wulf a little bit less. Polikarpov, the PO2, I don't know if you can directly compare that, so I put it to the right, but there's a big variable of only 10,000 aircraft. Was it 20,000 or was it 30,000 aircraft produced? Then the Hurricane, 14,000. I put the Mosquito and the Stuka in there. Stuka as a dive bomber, ground attack, whereas the Typhoon was also ground attack. So a bit of a stretch. You can compare the two, but you can see the Hawker Typhoon, the most produced of the aircraft that I discussed tonight, at 3,317. The Tempest, 1,422, and the Fury only 860. To the right, I put the Catalina, the Storch, the Lysander, just as data points for no other reason than I like those aircraft. Okay, so there you have an idea of how much were produced. The survivors, directly after the war, here's a list of the survivors. You can't really see what is there on the screen. It's on your on the PDF file, but on the right, there's basically most of the sources saying 1 aircraft left. They scrapped everything else. And so that's the Hawker Typhoon at the Royal Air Force Museum, London. To the right, you can see 1 original left. And then to the left here in the middle, several other partial airframes. And they list them there, and they are restoring them. And there's a very interesting series of videos called Spitfire Garage, I think it's called, and where they have step-by-step restoration of the Typhoon. The thing is called Spitfire Garage, but they feature the Typhoon restoration there. And there you have the official war museum at the landings at Cannes in France. The memorial, there is a Typhoon. This is a replica, smaller size Typhoon than the real aircraft. So a replica that is the French see it as one of the greatest aircraft ever because it helped to liberate them. And so that is at the Khan Memorial. And then the bibliography, the books I used, so you can find the references. As I said, I gave you all the PDF file, and you can look at it. And now comes the difficult part. I've got a whole room full, audience full of people who want to ask questions. I'm listening. Okay, Carl, over to you.
Yeah, Chris, thank you very much. This is very, very comprehensive. Thank you for your trouble and your effort in preparing and doing the presentation tonight. Yeah, we have a very nice big audience tonight, so I think without wasting too much time, let us just start. I'm going to go around on my screen as I see people and try and be